What is the most creepiest, bone-chilling thing you have ever read online that claims to be true? This I read in a thread a while back, lost the link. True story time. I was about 4 or 5 years old and my parents had just separated. My mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room, but I liked sleeping in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the 1st floor, and I remember that it was in the middle of the summer and my mom had a window open her room that was directly behind the bed above the headboard. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night and remember sitting up and seeing that our cat was sitting in the doorframe of my mom's room. Her door was open and you could partially see into my bedroom. It was strange because our cat was a huge snuggler and was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mom and wake her up. In the 3-4 seconds it took her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up in the doorframe and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mother proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window again. We were on the 1st floor, and it was maybe a 3-foot drop to the ground. She quickly followed, and we were able to start screaming for help and someone called 911. The police came, but didn't see any signs of forced entry. Only that our front door was unlocked, which led them to believe the man must have exited that way. But the strange thing was that my mom swore up and down that she had locked the door that night with the deadbolt and chain lock. About a week later she was cleaning the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. BRB. Loading shotgun and checking all closets. I found clothes in my closet. I think someone has been living in there. It was the story about an ex-marine who was driving on the road at night and he sees a car in the middle of the road with 2 people lying on the ground. He has this gut feeling that something is wrong and he decides to act on it by driving past the car and the 2 people. While he is driving he takes a look at his rearview mirror to see the 2 people lying on the road stand up with 10 other people coming out of the bushes. I did not know that S like this existed. See? This scares the out of me. Dancing smiling weirdo guy does nothing for me. Here is the link to the story. Yep. Never stopping for bodies. My dad sorta made this mistake, not really, which I'll explain. When we were in Peru during my dad's military career he would sometimes have to come home late at night. One night he came through a bad part of town on accident and almost ran over a body in the road. He saw some guys sitting on the edge of the road, so he stopped WTF dad to ask them what happened. The car we drove around there was bulletproof for the most part. My dad was kinda doing stuff that made the cartels mad, so it's a good precaution. Turns out the guy in the road was actually dead, but noon would stop to help them, so they couldn't get the body. Del all creepypastas. Night I hate myself. I don't remember what the link was, but it was a forum of people with infectious diseases coordinating to send vials of blood to people with other infectious diseases. They would take low doses of antibiotics to weaken the effect of the antibiotics and strengthen the strains of diseases. I remember thinking that this was the kind of stuff that the CDC would get involved in immediately. It was basically bioterrorism. Drive. Ramsey. Very scary and creepy. I was pretty shocked to open this thread and see your comment. I'm glad that I made the post because it helped me to see what the situation was like to the adults involved, especially my parents, but also to the police, neighbors and teachers who knew. At that age, it was all very surreal. I know it was frightening for all of us, but it had to be absolutely horrifying for my folks. Wow. I can't believe you and your family had to be put through that. Relieving to know that he's gone. But how is life now? Does this series of events still affect your daily life? The transcript of the tapes David Parker replayed to his victims. For me, it's the guy who was camping out in the deep forests of Canada or something and thought he was being watched by something. He didn't think much more of it before he got home and found a picture of himself sleeping in the camera. The story of the woman who went missing and her Facebook account devolved into a paranoid schizophrenic mess always creeps me out the most. I realize this is very late, but thanks to /u/Zephyrs for the name/link. Karen Catherine Waldegrave. This is one of the few I'm not familiar with. Any hints for a link, or is it just Lark Voorhees? I've read about serial killers quite a lot. I just find the subject fascinating and never really get caught up on or affected by grisly details. Sure, I feel sad for the victims and their loved ones, but the gore and depravity never really bothers me. Dahmer, Chikatilo, Gene, Fish. Read all about them in detail and was perfectly fine. However, there was one guy whose deeds really did me up. Dean Cole. He was America's most prolific serial killer before Ted Bundy took the dubious distinction. So I thought it strange that I'd never heard of him before. The short of it is that he was a pretty normal guy in his younger years. A bit of repressed homosexuality, but nothing about him could have hinted at what he was capable of. He basically groomed and paid 2 boys to supply him with their friends, and when they ran out, other kids in several neighborhoods he lived over the years. He would tie these kids, all boys, to his torture board where he would rape, mutilate and ultimately kill them. Then he would dispose of the bodies in several locations, including a boathouse. These activities went on for a number of years, and he was very careful and methodical about the whole thing. I don't think it was ever suspected by authorities that the large number of missing boys were connected. The thing that really shook me up is how the 2 boys he recruited were so callous and were perfectly fine in sending boys of their own age and social group/school to their deaths for cash, and were quite happy to aid Cole in torturing the victims and disposing of the bodies. Eventually one of the boys brought a girl to his friend. Cole, angry and annoyed and scared the girl might report him, set about killing the girl. But the boy must have liked her or something, because he ended up shooting and killing Cole to protect her. I think the fact he was never captured or faced punishment for his crimes makes him much creepier than other serial killers. He was never seen on the stand or in a jumpsuit in jail, so he seems for it. He was never analyzed by psychologists and found to be a madman or deeply disturbed. There's just no logic or reason behind his crimes other than his own personal gratification. He's just emblazoned in my mind as some kind of heinous boogeyman above and beyond the reach of man's police and justice system. That's why he me up more than any other serial killer I've read about. Can't remember the article or where on the web it was, but it was a lot more detailed than the Wikipedia article and included Polaroid pictures of victims, some still unidentified, strapped to his torture board awaiting their horrific, untimely ends. Not for the faint of heart. Relevant story. In high school, I was super fascinated by serial killers. Read every book on them I could get my hands on. Once on the way to a party in high school, a friend and I were driving through the Heights. I had just finished the encyclopedia of serial killers the night before. I mentioned that we are in the same neighborhood where Cole did his work. Friend asks what street. Do a little googling because I'd blanked on the street name. I tell her, Columbia Street. We both look at the Columbia Street sign in front of us and just nope it the right out of there. I mean, it was years after Cole was even active, but the coincidence was just so eerie.